Hey, hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Limitless Show. Today, my guest and I will be talking about motivation and productivity, but especially where to put those things in your life. So if that interests you, then definitely keep watching. I am beyond excited to introduce my guest. I have lined up so many questions, more questions than I normally do, because I'm just so excited to talk to him because he has so much to say on this topic. His YouTube channel is all about productivity. So these questions are just going to be answered by the master of productivity. Thank you so much for being on the Limitless Show, Demetri.
Hi, Emily. Thanks for that. I'm not the master of productivity. I like to call myself a productivity enthusiast, if anything, but I do my best to convince people that I'm the master of productivity. So maybe I did a good job of that because you think I am.
Yeah, definitely. So basically, for anyone new watching the show, the Limitless Show is where I bring a new guest every single week and we talk about a limitation they've had in their life and how they've overcome it, in the hopes that if someone else is watching this and struggles with the same thing, what we say on this show will help them too. So you said you wanted to talk about productivity and motivation. So first of all, what I want to ask you is, when you weren't as productive as you are now or motivated, because you said that you were productive, but you weren't putting them in the right things, you weren't productive in the right places, areas of your life. What did your life look like? How was that limiting you?
To be blunt, I had a pretty massive World of Warcraft addiction for about 4 years, or 3 years. I probably expanded. Yeah, probably 3 years. I mean, I was extremely productive at the game of World of Warcraft or whatever I'd been into. I'd say I was very productive in the sense that I was in shape, like that was fine. But besides like my physical health, I really did not pay attention to my mental health at all. I would just play World of Warcraft for expansive hours, way too many hours in the day. If I admitted the actual number, people would probably be like, "What? That's it's kind of freaky," considering how much stuff I talk about productivity. But the big thing for me was realizing early on in this like sort of self-improvement, self-development journey that I did have a lot of passion and I had a lot of work ethic in me. I was just literally putting it all into something that was a complete waste of time. That's kind of where the epiphany happened regarding like the fact that I had productivity within me and motivation within me. It was just tailored towards something that didn't matter at all.
I can completely, I relate to that. I'm not a gamer, but I am an avid series watcher. I'm an avid Netflix watcher. And if I don't watch what I'm doing, I can productively watch many episodes. I remember when I was studying ages ago and I watched literally 8 hours of TV for a week every single day.
It's impressive.
Yeah, it's really impressive. But then people are like, I don't have enough time. And you're like, you really do if you think about where you're putting your time. So what I want to ask you now is, how does your life look different now?
So now instead of, well, for one, my sleep schedule is much different. I would go to bed way too late before and then get up way too late as well. I'd probably get up around like 10:30 when I was in university. Actually, I would get up and work out in the morning and then the 2.5 hour midday nap would ensue. And that was not exactly the most productive thing on the planet. That's bad for your sleep cycle. Don't barely sleep and then sleep 3 hours in the middle of the day and think that you're getting 8 hours. That's not how that works. I would go to bed 1, 2 in the morning. So my sleep schedule was overall just out of whack. I would most of the time do things last minute. So for me, a big difference in my life was I went from just focusing on, all right, I have time, I'm going to go play this game and then eat when I feel hungry and then finish my schoolwork last minute, which I ended up doing pretty decent. I think, I don't know if you know anything about the US grading scale, but I go to a pretty decent university. I'd go to a private university that does pretty well, and I had like a 3.4 GPA, which is like AB average or whatever. And I was like, okay, so I'm doing something right. So I thought to myself, I must be doing something right because it's not an easy school. I'm still getting good grades. But the real thing was I could have been doing a lot better. I was just justifying my actions through arbitrary numbers and arbitrary grades when honestly, my mental health wasn't there. My life was different in that sense as well. I was very stressed to finish those things last minute, as much as I didn't want to admit it at the time. Now I don't have to worry about finishing things last minute because I'm so much ahead of things usually when I'm planning.
This interview is going to be really interesting for me as well, because the reason I have so many questions is because I reckon I really need to work on my productivity, because all you're saying there, I am a last minute person. I get things done and I get them done well. But if I have time, I'm like, yeah, I've got time. I'll do it a bit later. That's something I definitely need to work on. So what I want to ask you is, from when you were kind of transitioning, like starting, like being more productive, what did you start with? How did you start being more productive?
I think the first thing I did was I switched, or well, I didn't switch my sleep schedule first. I was going to say that, but that's not correct. I would probably say that the main thing I switched was getting rid of negative things from my life. So for example, one, I quit Warcraft cold turkey, which was for me like a big deal. You have that many hours a week dedicated towards something. I think when you get rid of something negative though, a habit that's negative, you have to replace it with something that's positive. I believe James Clear's talked about that in Atomic Habits.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong. When you do that, for me specifically, I replaced it with consuming content that was self-development related. And that was just kind of a coinciding coincidence. So for those of you that have seen my channel before, I don't know if you know Emily, but like my main influence is Matt D'Avella. And luckily around the time I quit Warcraft was the time that Matt D'Avella's A Day in the Life of a Minimalist video popped up on my feed. So at the same time as that happened and I quit the game, I ended up taking up some freelance work and video editing because I had made previous YouTube channels. People pay money for you to copy and paste and cut and paste stuff and video editing, which is kind of funny to me because I'd done it so many times. But like I replaced the bad habit with the good habit. Now the video editing only lasted a few months, but my ability to consume self-development content did not go away. I wasn't like sick of it. I really enjoyed it. So first of all, I would suggest whatever your bad habits are, cold turkey quit them if you can. If you can't, wean yourself off them and then replace them with something that's good. Because if you just take that away, you're going to most likely have another negative habit come in.
I just want to take you back, because this show for you, when I asked you what you wanted to talk about, it wasn't just productivity, because you were good at being productive. It was putting that productiveness into the right things. But what I want to ask you is, how do you know what is right and what is wrong? Obviously there's the obvious things, like you shouldn't spend too much time on social media, you shouldn't watch too much TV, and there's the good things like you should read books, you should exercise, you should go on walks. But a lot of problems for a lot of people is they're busy being busy when they don't need to be. Like they need to focus on the right things, but how do you know what the right things are to focus on?
I think it really boils down to what fits your goals, and goal setting at the beginning of whatever you're doing, whether it's your job or I'm sure you and I both have YouTube goals. I think understanding when you're going through a day-to-day basis, like having a priority system of what's important. So for example, I have a priority list of what's most important in my life to what's least important. And that was all based off my goal setting. So when I make my time management system overall, what I do is I look at, okay, for today, school is obviously number one because it's the thing I got to do right now. But if I was someone who's in the working environment, work should be number one. Number two should be, your exercise, your physical health. And then from then on out, it's up to you. And you just got to like make goals and figure out what is most important to you. And for me, I think being social is important to a certain extent though. Like being social is the last place on my list. And that's maybe because of the phase of life I'm in right now. I mean, that might sound ironic. I'm in college, but the way I have everything structured, I have time blocking set up so that I always make sure I do give myself enough social time so I'm not absolutely overworking myself. I think it's really about goal setting and taking some time to think to yourself, okay, what do you want to accomplish in your life? And if you're doing option B, which is lower on your priority list before you do option A, that means technically you're not being productive. So for example, I have a time every week or every few days that I'm supposed to like Swiffer and dust my room and stuff. That's important. But if you manage to be doing that during the time you're supposed to be recording a YouTube video, Demetri, you weren't being productive. You were just procrastinating. It's like a constant struggle people find themselves in. Oh, well, I did something. Did you though? Because like, is that number one on your list? You're having a clean room, number one on your list. Now, during the current situation, you could argue that the answer is yes. But other times of the year, me saying that wouldn't have seemed like a crazy statement.
Yeah, we do like to make the excuse that doing productive things means we're being productive, but sometimes there's something on top of that list that we need to do first. I read this great book, Eat That Frog, by Brian Tracy, and it was all about kind of listing your priorities and writing a list in the morning and then writing A, B, C, D, E next to them in priority. And you can't do the B's before the A's, you can't do the C's before the A and the B's. But yeah, that was really helpful for me. I would love to talk a bit more about productivity, how you organize your time and everything like that.
Basically, the most important thing I would say is if you don't have something where you plan your tasks out, do that. Make like a giant to-do list on some sort of virtual or physical base. So I personally do it virtually on a productivity app called Notion. And then from then on out, you need to plan out when you're going to do those tasks. I think it's really important that people put it being on a specific day. Now, if you're someone who has a very sporadic lifestyle regarding you're on call for work, I can completely understand why you couldn't put the tasks at a specific time. But if you know when you're going to do work, if you know when you're going to have time to eat, that sort of thing, everything falls into place regarding a block schedule, in my opinion. I think a lot of people do this thing where they say, well, what if I have to change my block schedule? I was like, it's a block schedule. I didn't say it was a stone schedule. Like I didn't say it was set in stone. I didn't say you have to carve it out. You got to like move your mouse a little bit on Google Calendar and it's fixed. Like really what you need to do is you need to plan based on a giant to-do list, put the highest things at the top, move those to-do lists on certain days. And if you can, and your lifestyle really lets that be the case, put it at a specific time during the day. Always overestimate how long it's going to take versus underestimate, because this is a little small mental thing that people don't realize. If you end up planning too many things during a day, the summers or I'm in during the school year when I'm like trying to figure out how much hours I'm really spending on certain tasks, or when I was new to YouTube, I didn't know how long some of the different tasks would take. Always plan that it's going to take longer than you think, because if you do it the other way around, then you're thinking you're never doing as much as you need to. But it could be possible that whatever you're doing just takes longer than you think it should take. And then at that point, you're stressing yourself out over the fact that you're not doing enough when most likely you could be doing enough. Now, if you find yourself with hours at the end of the day, having not done enough, then you can start adding more things per day. But those are my main suggestions. 1, make a big to-do list. 2, move those to-dos onto certain days. 3, make a specific time to do them throughout the day.
You talk a lot about on your channel as well, waking up early and morning routines and things like that. Would you say that's a lot to do with your productivity and how you keep productive?
Yeah, so I made a 5 a.m. video very early on my channel, and I really need to make an updated one with like actual B-roll and such, because I don't know, like people like that. I am updating my morning routine is not 5 anymore. People are going to be like, oh, way to one up me, Demetri, but you made it 4:45 now. So that yeah, I did that because why not? I really do believe that waking up early is important. When I was in that stage of my life, when I was waking up later, it's not really good for you, in my opinion, to get that circadian rhythm thrown off like that in the first place. I think if everyone like didn't have technology and whatnot, most likely we'd all fall asleep at like 10, wake up at like 7, 8. Like, to be honest, that's probably the case if there was no technology, if we didn't really have work schedules and stuff. If we were just put in a vacuum of like human psychology, we'd probably wake up when the sun came up. When the sun went down, probably fall asleep. So my opinion is you should get up pretty early. It's like I said, I'm going to start getting up at 4:45. I've been getting up at 5 a.m. since I want to say November of last year. God, that's been a while. Wow, that was kind of like a mini epiphany there. I'm almost at like a year of being, being an early, annoying, up early person. So I would say getting up early is really effective, because if you get up at 5 or 6, the majority of people will not be awake. I think that the majority of people wake up between 7:30 and then they're to 8, and then they kind of do this thing where they're on their phone for like an hour, and they're like, oh, I got to get to work. You're not going to be bothered from the hours of 5 till 7:30. This is how many days of proof, in my personal opinion, from the people that I know. They just straight up, I'm the hour. Let's say I wake up at 5, but I'm starting to do things by 5:30. I have from 5:30 to 7:30 to do things without anyone interrupting me. It's pretty great. I can toss my phone away. I can put on music if I want to, and I can just be productive as much as I want to, or not. There are some mornings where I just kind of relax because there's no one around, which is nice, but most of the time I do work. And I would definitely suggest getting up early, because no distractions means being more productive, because anytime you are taken from doing one task and getting distracted, it takes you about like 15 to 20 minutes to refocus on the task you're doing. So that morning 2 hours could end up being about 2.5 times more productive than like other hours during the day, the other 2 hour time slots during the day.
Yeah, and if you wake up early, I guess you've done more than most people have by the afternoon by 8:30.
Yeah, there's an old saying from a lot of people that like, if I wake up at 5, I feel like by the time I finish lunch or like I get to lunch, I did more than how much I used to in an entire day or the same amount. For me, by the time I'm at lunch, I would definitely say I probably am as productive as I used to be before getting up early, like throughout an entire day's work, because you're just so much less distracted. There's so many little things that don't bother you. People don't pull you aside. And that second half of the day, when you're past lunch till 5 p.m. or whatever it is, you can be less productive and feel okay about it. You will probably have a little bit more of a lull, but there are ways to get around that. I think that meditation has been good for me recently. I'm doing a challenge on that, but there's a lot of little things you can do as a pick me up. And then even if you're less productive in that second half, I'd say overall, you're probably going to be more productive in your day.
Yeah, definitely. I know there's not going to be a magical answer to this. I'm trying to wake up earlier, and I know it is. You just got to get up when the alarm goes, but how do you do it?
You need like backup alarms. You need whatever your alarm is, put it in another room or put it far across the room. I fall into a habit of not listening to that own advice myself a lot of the times, and that's when I'm having the issues of falling back asleep. But generally speaking, this piece of equipment should be over there, because my bed's there, should be like over there in the corner. And if it's able to be, newsflash, I don't like to dissuade excuses as harshly as I do, but sometimes I feel like when I'm talking, I do that. So just in the nicest way possible. I have an iPhone 11. If it's at even 20%, this thing is going to last throughout the night. Probably even 10% is going to last throughout the night if you're not on it. So if I put it across the room, it not being charged is not an excuse, Demetri, because when I'm up at 5, it'll then charge for 2 hours when I'm awake, because I can plug it in wherever I want to because I'm awake.
You're speaking to me. I do that all the time.
Like,
I'm like, it needs more charge. It's got to stay by me.
yeah, but if you're up at 5 or whatever time it is, or early time, it's going to be able to charge probably almost close to a full charge by the time that you're up and charging it. So that's like something I had to convince myself of. I realized, I was like, wait a second, why do I need the charger by my bed or in my room in general? That's kind of just a bad excuse. So when I put the phone farther away from me, do that. Have some water next to you. So when you wake up, I always have a water bottle that's like insulated. This thing.
Oh yeah.
That's made a lot of features in my videos.
No,
but yeah, I do that. And it really helps a lot, because water really helps just activate your like awareness for the day. Mm-hmm. So I usually drink a glass of water and have my phone way too far for me to want to walk back to my bed.
Brilliant advice. Thank you so much. I will be implementing them into my life very shortly. I'll let you know how it goes. So next thing I want to ask you, and I think I know the answer, but once again, when you said what you wanted to talk about on the Limitless Show, it wasn't just productivity, it was motivation as well. How does productivity and motivation link for you? Why are they linked? Why did you want to talk about both of them?
I think a big thing to understand for a lot of people is motivation should be, so there's, sorry, I gotta find the wording here, but extrinsic motivation and intrinsic motivation are two different things. So intrinsic motivation is being motivated towards personal goals or being motivated towards goals for personal reasons. And extrinsic goals are when you're being motivated based on external factors. For example, you have a family, the old classic, someone's providing for their family, they're going to do what they need to do to have the motivation to get it done. I think finding extrinsic motivation in anything is going to make you more productive just by virtue of the fact that you are going to do it for another person and someone's depending on you. Now, in any realm of possibility, you most likely have other people in your life that are depending on you for something. And I think finding whatever your passion is and somehow linking it back to, if I focus on this passion or I focus on my work in some sort of capacity, me focusing on the motivation from the outside perspective will make you infinitely more productive. So for example, I know personally that if I am more productive, if I work harder, I'm going to have monetary gain from it. I'm going to have that from whether it be my grades being better, and then in the future I get a better job. But I've realized for myself that I think at some point, as most of us do, we would like to have a family, et cetera, et cetera. And when I'm older, I realize the things I'm doing now will most likely positively impact the theoretical family I'll have in the future. So I try to focus on that. Or I'm a religious person, so I try to like focus on the fact that I'm doing good by God, and that works for a lot of people who are in the same boat as me as being a Christian. And I think focusing on your family or your faith or a team, I think teams always make people work harder. You see that with sports overall. Anytime someone is usually in a proper team, they perform better. That's why when a lot of people get done with being on a team, they're done with sports in general, they're done with working out in general. And finding that extrinsic motivation and motivation in general is going to make you infinitely more productive. I had, when I played Warcraft, my motivation towards playing it so much actually was not because I wanted to play the game. It was because I had like a team of people that I would play with and such. And that's why I played so much. So that was like an aha moment for me. The second I kind of cut not the people out of my life, but I strategically kind of weaned off not wanting to talk to them, but weaned off talking to them. And then all of a sudden I didn't want to play the game as much. So once I found that out, then I looked more into how motivation worked. And I went, oh, I'm glad I did that. So I would definitely recommend for anybody. If you have family members, if you have friends, or whatever the situation may be, find something outside of yourself to motivate yourself. And most likely you will end up being more productive and more passionate and be able to put out more work than if you just focus on, okay, I want to make more money. That's usually just like, it doesn't work. For some people it does. It usually doesn't work as well as outside influences.
You've really got to figure out what works for you with motivation, because sometimes it's a push and sometimes it's a pull. Like sometimes you're being pushed away from something and you don't want to have that life anymore, so you're like going away from it. Or sometimes it's your future pulling you, like you want for your kids or you want for your family. And I think at many different areas of our life we have different types of motivation. As we're talking about productivity, if one doesn't find it easy to stay productive, how does one stay motivated to be, other than, this external and internal kind of motivation? How do you do it? Because there must be some days where you're like, is there some days where you're like, I don't want to wake up early?
Yeah, no, I mean,
I don't want to do this.
It is more often than I let on in the videos. It's much more often than I let on in the videos. There'll be afternoons where I am just like, yeah, I think I want to stop. I just don't want to do this. Like I go to myself, I was like, did I give myself a break today? I was just like, start finding excuses in my head. I think a big thing to help yourself with motivation when you don't want to be productive is going back to doing things. Like for me, I enjoy the processes of what I do a lot. I'm making YouTube videos. Now for school, it is a little bit different. I'm not saying I dislike school. I've never been one to be so against school that you never heard the phrase, I don't want to be at school today when I was growing up, which is usually a relatively big indicator as to how much people like school. I would just say that I have different processes and different like tricks that I kind of focus on that I don't use all the time. People have like productivity hacks they use all the time. So for example, the Pomodoro technique is important to a lot of people's success. I don't use that like 80% of the time. It's for the 20% of the time I don't want to be doing things. So the 80% of the time I'm staying productive just by virtue of I'm really happy with what I do when I'm doing YouTube things. I'm invested in wanting to get this degree. Save the productivity techniques for like when you're wanting to be unproductive, because if you just use them all the time, they end up not being as effective. The Pomodoro technique is effective in a sense that you can focus for a little bit and take a little bit of a break. And I think inherently, though, it seems that a technique like that would be more useful for when you want to take breaks. But I don't want to take breaks half the time when I'm doing YouTube stuff. I feel like I don't have time to take those 5-minute breaks. But with schoolwork, that's where I use a little productivity hack, because I'm like, all right, man, this reading 25 minutes later, I'm done taking a break. And letting yourself have that little bit of slack is better than not giving yourself any at all. And the next thing you know, you're 3 hours into a work session and you only work for like an hour. So because you end up giving yourself way too long a break. So I just suggest using hacks probably when you're least motivated.
Really interesting. Have you got any other productivity hacks, tips?
I'd say flow state is really important. And one of the main things that people talk about with flow state is novelty. And if you're able to in your work, I would definitely suggest if you're having one of those off days and not being productive. I think routine's very important, but even more than that, minor novelty is important. So if you have a way to create novelty, if you have a laptop and you have a desktop computer, or if you just have, even just, let's just say it's a laptop, right? And you work at a desk. The concept that you can only work at that desk is a little bit of a failure in a lot of people's minds because they're like, oh, I have to be in this desk working all the time. Literally move to another spot. Not maybe even not in your room, but like I could go into my living room right now, work on my laptop. And I've done that before, and that really helps. And that helps you achieve flow state more. Novelty in general helps you get more into the flow of things. Coffee shops are great. I'm not one to spend money, but you can go to a Starbucks and get like a small something, to whatever the smallest size is, or go to a Dunkin' or whatever coffee shop in the UK. Where you have there's like a tea shop chain at all?
Not that I know of. I don't really drink tea or coffee, so I'm not the one to ask.
No? Okay.
But yeah, last couple of questions really, which I'm sad because I'm enjoying, grilling you. So, what would you say to your past self who was not as productive in the right areas and motivated in the right areas as you are now? What would you say to him?
I would say to him, within the constraints of the YouTube algorithm allowing me to say non-vulgar language, I would say you need to focus on your mental health more than you think you need to. I think right now you're pretending that you're really having fun doing something, but you're kind of just distracting yourself from other things by playing a video game. And you're hearing advice from people and you're not listening. So take the advice other people are giving you and understand that this phase in your life, while you can continue it for a little more because you are young and it's fine, don't make this last more than another month, because it's not that, like, you can have fun without needing to spend all of your time doing what you're doing, and you're going to find yourself in a lot better mental state, physical state, etc. if you stop playing Warcraft so dang much. That's what I tell myself.
And also, other than telling people to go to your channel, which I will put all of Demetri's details in the description below if you are interested. He doesn't just talk about productivity. He does like 3 videos a week, is it still?
Yeah, I've been doing a podcast on Wednesdays, a vlog on Fridays, and a more formal type of video on Sundays. It's self-development. I mean, like, health and wellness is important to me, personal finance is important to me, and productivity is probably the number one topic on my channel, just because that's the most I've been exposed to. But all 3 of those things are, I think self-development's the good word for, like, I'm a self-development YouTuber is what I'd probably describe myself as.
Yeah, I'd describe you as that too. Other than that, and I'll put all the details in the description below, what would you say to someone struggling with productivity and motivation?
I would say you probably have something in your life that you've always wanted to do. You probably had something in your life that you've always thought you could maybe try to do, but you've thought to yourself, I can't. I don't think I can. I think that I'm not made for it as a person. It's just a dream that will always be a dream. Take some time and try to do the dream. You have extra time in your day, whether it's that is extra couple Netflix shows that you watch. I would just suggest that for a week, take those random things that you do at night and switch that to something that you've always wanted to do. Give it a try. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But most likely, you will get so entranced in what you're doing, you'll find out you have way more hours in the day than you think you do. And all of a sudden, the motivation for you to do these things are just way more than you thought. Do that, as well as fall down the right YouTube rabbit holes. I would really suggest, getting into the self-development space as a whole, whether it be watching content or making content. I think when I was younger, I would probably have thought, like, really? Like, why does this need to exist? And then you mature a little and you realize, yeah, I kind of was just being condescending towards something I didn't know much about. So I would definitely suggest to look at the self-development space more, as well as go and try to reach whatever dream it is that you have with a couple extra hours that you have throughout your days. And you'll probably be happy for doing so, because for me, I tried it and so far things are going pretty good. So
I second that. And also, I've been reading a book recently, or listening to a book called Everything is Figure Outable. And a chapter in it was saying that if a doctor said to you, you are going to die in 6 months unless you find 2 hours every single day to look after your health, you would be able to find them 2 hours. I'm sure everyone would be able to find them 2 hours, and 2 hours are there. You just have to you know, want to find it. So want it that much that you figure out where them 2 hours are, and do put it towards your dreams, put it towards what you want to do, because I say it way too much and it's way too morbid, but life is so short, and I can't get that into anyone's head enough. And it's crazy that you never know when your last breath is going to be. So you might as well do what you love and, you know, try and do the best that you can within whatever time you have. But other than that, have you got any last words or last points or last hacks or last anything to do with productivity and motivation?
I'd say one last hack that people don't talk about a lot is there's something called friction in life. I'm not talking about like physical, like things rubbing together. I'm talking about the amount of time that it takes to go between different tasks. Look up the concept of friction. Once you remove a lot of different friction points in your life, you generally will be able to find the motivation to be able to go and do more things. That, along with the concept of, I believe it's called decision fatigue. Decision fatigue is something where the more decisions you make in a day, the less good of a decision that is made. So, for example, I'm a minimalist, or I'm trying to be a minimalist now because I don't have to make decisions on my clothes, and that's like another step towards being more productive, being less stressed. I would definitely just recommend, like, once again, check out self-development stuff. Matt Devell is great. Thomas Frank's great. Ali Abdal's great. I have a book called 10 Steps to Saving Time and Doing More. It's a free ebook you can find on my website. The main point about the whole book is that you won't find anything like groundbreaking in it. But for me, as somebody who had went from not being productive in the right ways and not knowing anything about the space, I saw that kind of stuff and was like, whoa. So I figured if I basically made a very basic, this is the most basic productivity stuff. And if you have no experience to self-help, it's like probably the most compact, like, all right, here's a bunch of information about how to be more productive and healthy. But I would recommend checking that out. As I don't usually like self-plugs, but I never tried one. So
I'm
try it out.
interested. I'll go look
Yep.
at it afterwards,
Yep.
after this. No, I think it's Steve Jobs who does that as well. Did that.
Yeah. Obama, Steve Jobs,
Yeah.
a lot of people. Yeah.
So that they don't have decision fatigue, which is really interesting and something I'm definitely going to look into. But thank you so much for being on the show, Demetri. You have no idea how glad I am and how much of a pleasure it's been, especially as I know you are a very, 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 very busy person. But thank you so much for being here. And anyone who's watching this, thank you so much for watching. If you've liked it, please let us know by pressing the like button, putting a comment in the comments, subscribing, hitting the bell, and everything like that. I will definitely see you next week with another Limitless show. But thank you so much to everyone, and Demetri, I appreciate you. Thank you so much.